It's 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for being on board with us. Busy afternoon coming up here. We'll talk Rebels with our buddy Greg Gaston, Sports 56, Memphis, Tennessee. Great friend of the program. He and our good friend Eli Savoy co-host their morning show. Greg will join us in a bit. Greg is also now doing sideline reporting for Memphis Tiger football. So if we have some time, we might try to get in to see, is Memphis ready to be the G5 rep in the college football playoff?
I think they were until they got smacked by Navy. Yeah. And by smacked, I mean it was a close game, but they gave up a ton of points.
Well, Navy and Army undefeated. Did I hear right? I had the Andy Staples show, he and Ari Wasserman show on this morning. But, sometimes you have it on and you don't hear everything they're doing because I'm prepping and reading at the same time. But did I hear them say that there is a distinct possibility that Army and Navy could play a conference title game, then play the what we would call official Army-Navy game? Is that
maybe.
Or I know I'm not dreaming it.
I've never thought of it that far ahead because the idea on its own does sound preposterous.
Yeah, I don't want to say that I
has to happen right.
Yeah, I didn't wake up at 4 a.m. and go, Army and Navy could play 2 weeks in a row. I heard them mentioning something about it. So if somebody knows or you want to hit me up on the Firehouse Subs text line with, that is a possibility, especially those of you who may be Army or Navy fans, like my father-in-law who's a Navy man. So, He cares.
Hey, Navy's scoring points right now. They're good.
Yeah,
they're playing real well.
But we'll talk to Greg about that. Lulu Kazan from the Greenville News is going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. She's on the Gamecock beat, and she's going to fill us in on the latest. I don't know how many of you take the time to look at the availability report that is now, officially put out every night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, by the Southeastern Conference for each conference game. But again, mentioning the Andy and Ari show this morning, they basically said of the Ole Miss availability report, Lane Kiffin is trolling us. If you haven't seen it yet, Carolina's list has like 6 names. And yes, Raheem Sanders, Jared Brown, and Lenore Sellers are all on the list as questionable. Ole Miss has like 20 dudes.
It's a long list.
And
there's a CVS receipt.
There's a few I got one of those the other day. I was like, what are y'all giving me here? Y'all spend a lot on paper.
What kind of ancient manuscript are you adding to the end of this receipt? I bought 3 things. It shouldn't be this long.
I actually did. When the second one came out, I was like, what is that?
Why is there a second one?
Anyway, where was I? Oh, the Ole Miss availability report. It's mind games. And again, I love Lane. I'm not being critical of him in a way of like, come on, man, don't wait. Like, it's gimmicky. He's doing this to get in your head. I don't think there's any doubt of that. He is doing this to get in your head. Whoever you are, you could be Shane Beamer. You could be a Gamecock football fan. You could be a Gamecock football player. You could be a dude on the radio or a beat writer or, our buddy Rick Henry down the street. But there's no way that listen, I'm going to be curious to see, and I'm smiling as I say this, but I am serious. Does the Southeastern Conference start to take a look at what it is that Lane's doing from a Wednesday availability report to, say, the noon Saturday or the 2 hour, whatever, what's the limit? What is it on Saturday? 2 hours?
2 hours before game time. Yep.
Like, did they start looking? They don't want to fine anybody. They don't want to punish anybody. They do have terms that you have to adhere to. But he is. I agree. Because I saw it last night, and I was like, dang, that's long. And I was like, most of these dudes are going to play, if you call them questionable. But by Friday, what's it look like?
Does it clear up?
Yeah.
Is it like a normal receipt?
Yeah.
I mean, or
then it's like going to the convenience store. Do you want a receipt? No, I'm good.
No, please, for the love of God, no. I don't have enough room. Just in general, I don't need that receipt. But theory here. humor me for a moment. The reason he has so many players as questionable is so that they can make it look like they're not faking injuries whenever they have to hit the deck to slow things down. Hey, he was on the availability report as questionable.
You know what? I am not kidding. You just blew my mind.
I questionable to play.
I did not even. Okay.
I thought of this 30 seconds ago.
Okay. I'm not saying that makes it better or worse, but it does alter my perception.
Maybe that's part of the mind games here. Maybe not just to mess with you as to who or who may or may not be playing.
Yeah, I told you he was banged up.
Yeah, the reason we had to take 10 injury timeouts throughout the game is because he's nursing an ankle injury. And he's trying his gosh darn best.
Get the golf clap. Get the golf clap.
Well, we got it here somewhere.
Yeah, just get it.
I am feverishly looking.
You deserve a golf clap for that.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Give it up.
You deserve that.
He's cracked the code.
I had not thought of that. Well, now, Shane.
I'm on to him.
If you're listening.
I'm on to you, Lane Kiffin.
Darren. Is it Darren? It's not Darren's job. I guess it's Clint's job. I don't know whose job it is. Y'all need to triple the number of names on the list.
Put the whole damn team on there, man.
Why? But seriously, I mean, here's the thing. Why wouldn't you at this point? If you're South Carolina, watch this. All right, Lane.
I'd go tit for tat with him.
Yes. I'm serious. I know it sounds silly and absurd, but it's because it's silly and absurd. So you may as well do it, right?
If they're going to have a CVS receipt.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, do it.
You print out the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yes.
Like that. I don't just one-up them, two-up them.
My youngest is reading Lord of the Rings right now. It is a very large book.
It's a brick.
It's big, man. She's got the paperback, too. What was the original version like back in the day? I digress. No, you lean into it. Lean into it. So tonight, Coach Beamer, I implore you, because questionable is as gray an area as can possibly be 48 hours before kickoff.
Yes.
Is he going to play? I
don't know. It's questionable.
I mean, again,
a lot of things in our lives are questionable.
Shruggy shoulder guy,
I don't know.
Just do that. That's what they should do. They should have emojis.
Instead of having a designation, you have an emoji. And it's all just shrug shoulder guy.
Thinky, thinky guy.
Or eyeballs, the eyeball emoji. It's he might play.
For a guy that is out, just why are you even asking?
Or cry, a tear emoji, crying.
But I like thinky guy.
Oh, see, the thinky guy one, yeah.
And then shruggy guy.
The entire time.
Right.
Or like the little hand pinch one, it's that much of a chance.
Sure.
He's definitely not playing.
And if he's probable, one time you sent me the half, or no, was it Josh? One of you guys sent me the half salute guy.
I abuse the half salute.
Okay,
guy
I think it was you then.
All the time.
Yeah. That's probable. Or I'm good.
Reporting for duty.
Yeah.
Skull and crossbones if you're out for the year.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, all right, there you go. We've now, but seriously, Carolina, add a few names.
Yeah,
because Ole Miss are going to do the stall tactic, the dark arts. That's what it's being referred to around the world these days, because apparently a lot of sports are doing this now. Oh, my leg. What happened? I don't know.
Phantom injuries.
Yeah, man, but it hurts.
And it's going to be healed super fast. I just have a feeling it's one of those. I need to sit on the field for a little bit.
So we'll see how that goes tonight. But another injury report. Before that, though, you'll get to hear from Shane Beamer. He will be on Carolina Calls. He and our good friend Todd Ellis. That's tonight at 6. You can also hear that on the game in Myrtle Beach. Sorry to you folks in Florence. You'll have to.
You just have to use, the game app.
Cup your ears real good.
Or you could just drive to Myrtle Beach or Columbia. Yeah, and you know what? Then you can just sit in your car once you get in range.
Why not? Head over there.
Listen to Carolina Calls and then drive back home.
That's right. So we'll get into plenty more of that for you. Got some coach and player sound that we still haven't gotten fully into this week, so we'll do that. Do want to remind you as well, tomorrow we're at Columbia Craft, so come say hey, grab a beer or two. Join me late in the show for a pint of little nostalgia goggles, he tried to say.
It gets a lot harder to say after each one. Jay, you just had your 5th pint of what again?
Right. If I had 5 of those, dude, I would fall. I couldn't have 5 of those. I couldn't. The little, at least. Now, nostalgia goggles, that's like a double.
Yeah.
Dude, no, I'd be on the floor. What's wrong with that guy? You don't want to know.
Mentally, he's on Mars right now.
That's right. I'd be out, dude.
Jay Phillips is no longer with us.
I would be out. There's no question. 803-404-6100 for you to be a part of the program today. I'll probably talk about this again in a little more detail. I know I will. I'm not too bummed out about the Braves. I'm bummed because whenever the season is over, it's disappointing because I am a big Atlanta Braves fan. This year has been a struggle. David O'Brien put it into some perspective. The Braves had, I think I wrote this down. The Braves had 6 guys that were part of the original starting lineup or the pitching rotation, depending on how that either the rotation or the starting 9.
The projected starters.
6 guys miss at least 2 months each.
Oof.
I mean, now Strider whole season, I think he made 2 starts, maybe 3.
I don't even think he finished the second start.
Acuna, May. Murphy got hurt early and didn't come back until June, and he was not good this year.
Albies missed a ton of time.
Ozzie was on the IL, twice. Austin missed the last 2 months of the year. Michael Harris missed over 2 months. Yeah,
Ronaldo Lopez got hurt.
Ronaldo missed time. Chris Sale had, I think, only one. Well, Max was on the IL twice, but maybe not for 2 months. Sale did miss starts.
Especially one really big one.
Yeah. I can't remember, though, if Sale ever actually went on the IL or if they just
Not that I can remember.
I think he did. I think they just sat him a couple of times and had him miss starts. And that's, listen, reason, excuse, I don't care how people label it, whatever. Saw a couple of fans hit me on Twitter last night and say, same old Braves or what. I'm like, no, it's not the same old Braves.
Yeah, this year's a little
it.
different.
It's not. It's not. I know it's disappointing, but when you don't have some of those sluggers in the lineup, you can't pitch around everybody when you have a full. But it feels like they were able to, the opponents, more this year. But I'm not too bummed out. I'm glad they made it. I'd have felt worse if they had been swept by the Mets on Monday and not made it. I promise you that.
That would have made you feel ill.
It would have, and especially because of who would have beaten you. Seriously.
Yeah.
But now, and we'll talk more about it later, it's going to be an interesting offseason. By the way, quick aside from that, but staying with baseball, learned this morning too. I'll just give you one example, okay, because he's not the highest paid player on the team. But Charlie Morton makes $20 million a year. And I like Charlie. So this is not about Charlie, what I'm going to tell you. Charlie Morton makes $20 million a year. He's the Braves' 4th or 5th starter, depending on how things go health-wise, right? The payroll of the Detroit Tigers is $19 million.
And they just swept the Astros.
They're moving on. I mean, that's
some Moneyball stuff right there.
Just wow. And in today's market.
It's remarkable, man. I don't think the Oakland A's even had budget that low or payroll that low.
That's crazy.
Stupid.
I mean, and I don't know who the highest paid Tiger is.
Riley Green, maybe.
Maybe. But, I mean, 40-year-old Charlie Morton, $20 million.
I'm going to look at that breakdown.
Detroit Tigers playoff roster, $19 million.
How many Detroit Tigers can you name just off the top of your head?
Lance Parrish still catching.
Brandon Inge ain't walking through that door.
Al Kaline still hitting. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Now the football season is well underway. So is hunting season. So is gift-giving season. Maybe you're a really nice gift giver and somebody's getting a new set of wheels. Or, again, you're getting something to take out into the country when you go hunting, or to make sure that the tailgate has all the room necessary for everything you need to take. Get some great low rates when you get that next vehicle with our friends at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. There really might not be a better place, and I'm kind of serious about this. They offer the same low rates on all new to 21 models. They've got some great options for older vehicles if that's the market you're in, and they can finance over 100% of the retailer purchase price for new to 21 models, plus offer additional coverage and insurance options dealerships can't beat. So go shop for that next vehicle, then call Palmetto Citizens or log on to palmettocitizens.org and see how much you can save on your next vehicle. My wife and I are members. We love them. We use the Millwood branch, 14 locations around town, Palmetto Citizens.
We've done what we need to do 3 times, and 1 time we didn't. And our goal is to score more points than the opponent. No, I'm not a stat guy. I don't care about stats. I don't look at stats. I don't know anything other than that. I think that there's been areas I think we played to our strengths as an offense. We're running the ball better than we did in the past here, and it's because of the players we have. I also think it helps when you have 2 athletic quarterbacks. There's definitely areas of improvement, but all of our focus right now is on Ole Miss and making sure that we continue to play to our players' strengths.
That is Gamecock offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins looking ahead. And with that in mind, welcome back in, by the way. He's Elijah. I'm Jay. Good to have you. Greg Gaston, Sports 56 in Memphis, Tennessee, coming up in about 10 minutes. Elijah's got a poll question today that touches on some of the things that Dowell just mentioned in there, at least roundaboutly.
Yeah, well, some of it's, going into this Ole Miss game, what it would be your biggest concern for the Gamecocks going into this game. Is it the health of Lenora Sellers? Is it the offensive line versus Ole Miss's pass rush? Is it the tempo that Ole Miss plays with? Or is it tackling, which has been an interesting theme when asked about the secondary between Shane Beamer and Clayton White this week? 43.4% of the almost 200 voters say Lenora Sellers' health is their biggest concern. 21.4% says it's the Ole Miss tempo. 19.7% says it's the offensive line versus Ole Miss's pass rush. And 15.6% say it's tackling.
That's a good mix. Boy, you do need to tackle.
Yeah, against a team that gets a lot of yards after the catch, the third most in the Southeastern Conference, behind only Florida and Texas.
Need to tackle. But you need your quarterback back. And I happened to see that someone commented that Raheem Sanders' health is important, and that goes into something that Dowell said, we're better at running because of who we have running.
Shout out to Glenn for saying Rocket Sanders' health is actually more important.
And that's Glenn's opinion, and I think it's a fair one. No, I don't know that there's a wrong. I mean, yes is the answer. But I'm not surprised that the health of the starting quarterback is number one on the list. And if you're not trying to game the system with the availability report, so I will take them at their word that he is questionable. At the same time, I do believe there is at least a sliver of gamesmanship in there to keep Ole Miss thinking about it, which I think is one of the reasons that we said about what Lane did. If y'all haven't seen it, we talked about it at the top of the show. Carolina has like 6 names on the list. Ole Miss has like 20.
At least.
Maybe more. I have to go back and count. But then Elijah, as I said, Elijah just kind of blew my mind because it makes perfect sense, and I wish I had thought of it, but I didn't. There's so many names on the list so that when these dudes go, oh, ow, and fall down, because they're gonna,
they can say, hey,
I told you he's a little bit hurt. He's a little bit banged up. We're not lying.
So now, what we need to do, I need to go ahead and just print that sheet off, that long CVS receipt of an injury report, and just notice during the game who it is that's hitting the deck to slow some things down, and then see if it matches up with our availability report.
Let me. Well, I can't find it now. Last night it was at the top of the page. Why'd they move it? Come on, people.
To mess with you.
They did.
That's the only explanation.
Well, I'll find it and I'll count them for you in just a minute. But it's. I think it's going to be. The way Robbie played against Akron is encouraging.
Yes.
But I can only, and it's really, I don't want to say this is all about Robbie, but then you can't help but say that it's about Robbie. But it was Akron. He did really, really well against Akron. And some may say, well, you should. I've seen this team, this school, have games against schools like that where you kind of, if you will, play down to the competition. I do not believe they did against Akron. I thought they played really well. And
hard to play down your competition and win by 43.
Exactly. And really, should they have scored? Debatable. If you had been at full strength, do you score more? Debatable, but you could probably look at both those questions and go on them scoring. Again, Judge Collier just, a half second earlier timing of the jump, and that ball gets, knocked down or intercepted, but knocked down primarily. And yeah, if Lenoris and Rocket are able to go, you probably tack on a few more. Maybe you get up to 56, 63. I don't know. But to me, if it's going to be a game about Robbie, it's also going to be a game about Dowell and what Dowell wants to dial up. And I'm not here to say that Dowell's going to dial up the wrong things. It's what, what we talk a lot about the system right? And that's one of the reasons you brought Robbie in was A, to compete for the job, but B, really when something goes. I mean, it's almost like it was not preordained, right? But
they prepared for this
Yeah.
pretty well because they knew that there's a possibility of it happening, especially with a quarterback who is as mobile as Lenora is.
And so it's going to be different. But a lot of people, well, if the play calling was so, listen, I think I think by and large, I think Dowell's play calling has been perfectly fine this season. You got to go execute. Again, a couple of things he wants back, yeah, but otherwise execute. So I don't. It's just too easy for fans anywhere. The Georgia fans do it. Bobo sucks. I don't know.
I think Mike Bobo plays to the strengths of his team at least well enough to get stuff done.
A lot of people do it.
He's not a wizard by any means.
No.
He's not one of those wonder kids up there in the press box that's dialing up, all this creative magic that a lot of people see on Sundays. But it's at least tailors to the strength of his team.
So again, hit us up. We'll get some more results. Once again, Elijah, read the poll question with the options.
Yes, the poll question for today, pinned to the top of our profile at 107.5 The Game. What is your biggest concern for the Gamecocks going into Saturday's game versus Ole Miss? Is it Lenora Sellers' health? Is it the offensive line versus Ole Miss's pass rush? Is it Ole Miss's tempo that they play with? Or is it tackling? Also, feel free to comment if you have an extra concern that weighs on you a little more heavily than those four do.
We'll continue to update that for you. Come back on the other side of the break. Our buddy Greg Gaston, morning show co-host at Sports 56 in Memphis, Tennessee, will join us. Greg, a great friend of the program, and he'll give us the latest on what they're hearing out that way in the SEC when it comes to the Rebels heading to Columbia. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Talking Gamecock football as Ole Miss comes to town on Saturday afternoon. Welcome back in alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Got a lot more to get to from Dowell Loggins and Clayton White, who have spoken. And again, Shane Beamer live as soon as we are done here tonight, 6 o'clock. It is Carolina Calls live from back streets, right up the hill from 5 Points. It's back that way. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, it's back that way over there.
Take a couple turns.
That's right. Very easy to get to.
Follow all traffic laws.
It'll be live right here on these very airwaves as soon as we are done. On these very airwaves right now, we welcome back onto the program our very good friend Greg Gaston. He and our buddy Eli Savoy are the morning show co-hosts at Sports 56 in Memphis, Tennessee. And Greg also is just he wears like 10, 15 media hats in Memphis, Tennessee. I mean, he's doing Tigers stuff, and what don't you do when it comes to sports in Memphis? I think that's probably the easier way to answer the question.
Well, Jay, first of all, it's great to hear your voice again. Great to talk with you and Elijah, and thank you for the invite. Yeah, I do a lot of things. I'm the Tigers sideline reporter for football. I do play-by-play for men's basketball on ESPN+. I do baseball on ESPN+ as well. I'm out of the local television news profession after 27 years, but I had to cut down something. So my 3-hour radio show daily, and then all that work with the Tigers, and I still do some MMA and things like that. So I enjoy it. And look, you and I have known each other for quite some time, and we'd rather be doing this than hammering nails or laying cement or doing that tough stuff. Sure.
No, it's a good gig if you can get it. I certainly agree with that. Time permitting, I want to come back around to the Memphis Tigers in just a second. But let's start with the Ole Miss Rebels and you know how their reaction was, you know, from not only, you know, your audience and so many Ole Miss fans in your audience and out that way, but what you think as well after losing to Kentucky. That's a game they were, I mean, let's just say it, Greg, they were supposed to win.
Jay, not good. The reaction has not been good. It's almost like they're shell-shocked with what happened. Now, granted, it wasn't a daunting first 4 games. That non-conference schedule, Wake Forest, I guess, was expected to be a better program when they went ahead and got this contract done several years ago, but Wake Forest didn't put up much resistance, and the other 3 teams were cakewalks. So it really did not have a lot of competition. But still, with that said, people expected Ole Miss to just make that easy transition once they got into conference play. All things pointing to Ole Miss as being one of those teams that should be competing, and if they're not competing for a playoff spot, then something's wrong. Well, lo and behold, here comes Kentucky into town, into Oxford, on the road in a hostile environment, and just physically whipped up on Ole Miss, beat them in the trenches. They stymied Jackson Dart, who put up computer game-like numbers in the first 4 games of the year. So this week has been real rough. I would imagine the practices have been tough, but I've been told that the entire staff has been told to stay off social media, so nobody's on social media this week. They know this is basically a do-or-die game. They can ill afford another loss. If it's a loss to Georgia down the road, then maybe, but still a long road to hoe if they're going to make it to the playoffs, even with 2 losses. Right now they're at 1, and if they could stay at 1, they got a great chance to make the postseason. But all of a sudden you turn around, and now you got to go on the road against a South Carolina team, as you guys know, whipped up on Kentucky at Commonwealth Stadium. And then they turn around and have to go to LSU. These next 2 weeks could really determine the fate early for Ole Miss before they even get a chance to play Georgia.
And Greg, when I go back and keep watching this Kentucky Ole Miss game, and I look at a lot of the numbers too, to me it almost feels like if you replay that game a lot, Ole Miss wins it, but the penalties at the end, on that final drive specifically on defense, the fumble that falls into the arms of a Kentucky player in the end zone, there's a lot of things that feel like they're very correctable for Ole Miss. But what's kind of, I guess, maybe the confidence meter that you guys have been able to gauge in Memphis about how much of this is more fluky than maybe this is just a sign of football ghosts existing and coming back to haunt Ole Miss?
Yeah, some of it was certainly self-inflicted, and they still could have won the football game. But I think there is concern, not so much from the team itself, but from the fan base, that maybe we aren't as strong as we thought this team was going to be. When we get physically whipped up front, that's a worry because you're going to play even more physical teams in the conference. But they still have a lot of confidence in themselves, and they should. They have talent on both sides of the football and a plethora of talent. Jackson Dart, certainly a Heisman Trophy candidate, maybe not anymore after last week. You have Trey Harris, who I think is the best wide receiver in the country. You have a rebuilt defense with Pete Golding running that show with a lot of studs, including some guys that will play on Sundays. So, yeah, the confidence factor is there. But I think from the fan base, like I said a moment ago, they're shell-shocked. They did not expect this. I can tell you that they expected to start the season 6-0, including a win at South Carolina and LSU going into that bye week.
And that was certainly the story at Media Days, was like, look, Ole Miss is going to be 6-0, and then it gets hard. And that's not surprising that a Kentucky team kind of went in there and did it. Greg Gaston with us, Sports 56, Memphis, Tennessee, as we scout the Ole Miss Rebels. You mentioned Trey Harris. I was going to go there next. I'm glad you did. Gave this to Elijah yesterday. Trey has 49 catches. The next four guys behind him combined, Greg, have 45. They are very reliant on him, but he finds ways regardless. Are there concerns that they're too reliant, or is he this good?
I think he's this good. I think there's certainly talent behind him. They got a really good tight end in Caden Priestcorn, who began his career at Memphis. I think he's an NFL tight end. So they do have other talent, but Dart loves going to him. And when he throws it in his direction, he catches it. He doesn't drop passes. He catches when he's double covered. So when you have a guy that good, and I mean, he is really, really special, they're going to go to him. So it'll be interesting how South Carolina defends Trey Harris. Do they try to go double team on him? What do they do to try to limit Harris? And if you can limit his targets, then for Ole Miss, you're forcing others to step up. I think they have the talent to do so, but I think that's the direction I would go if I was a DC. Try to take the ball out of the hands of Trey Harris.
Yeah, and when you mentioned he catches it and double, that's something that Elijah and I talked about yesterday, and this is more of an opinion thing for somebody like you who knows football. I'm wondering, Greg, would it be in Carolina's best interests to maybe just go one-on-one with him, let him get his, if you will, an old Michael Jordan kind of thing. You can't stop him. You can hope to contain him. Is that plausible in Southeastern Conference football? Or if you get this guy one-on-one all the time, does he just do nothing but burn you?
It's plausible if you think you're going to score a minimum of 35. If you feel it's going to be a shootout, then maybe that's the way to go. I don't think necessarily that should be the way to go. I think you try to do everything you can to defend Trey Harris. Now, running the football is essential for Ole Miss, and they didn't run the football that well this past weekend against Kentucky. Some of that has to do with the offensive line. They ran the ball very well early in the year with Parrish leading the way. But they're going to have to pick it up with the run game as well. But, yeah, with Trey Harris, look, 240 and 2 touchdowns is certainly plausible. And, again, if you're going to allow him to get his, who knows how much he can go off for. So, yeah, I would be very leery of trying to go with that philosophy of letting him get his and then try to stop everybody else.
And, Greg, you mentioned earlier the kind of revamped defense. I mean, they really, when they attacked the transfer portal, I feel like they retooled pretty significantly on the defensive side of the ball. Only gave up like 5.5 points a game for those first 4 games. But as you mentioned, they're cakewalks too. And then you saw Kentucky be able to move the ball when it mattered most. But what do you see as the real Ole Miss defense, given what you've been able to see so far through 5 games?
Yeah, I expected it to be vastly improved. You're right. They went out and they used the portal to their advantage. They used their NIL money to go out and get good players on that side of the ball. Pete Golding running the defense, a veteran who knows how to run defensive schemes. I think they're a more attacking defense than they've ever been. I think they're solid in all 3 phases on the defensive line, the linebacker position, and in the secondary. I'm not going to sit here and say they're a top 5 defense, but they're a vastly improved defense. And when they're aggressive, they can force turnovers as well. So usually Ole Miss, I'm not going to say were pushovers in the past. They've had great defensive players that have gone on to the NFL. But as a unit, they have struggled, and they've given up their share of points and yards over the last, 5-10 years. But this year, I think it's a team that can certainly compete and help their team be in a lot of games. Remember, Kentucky didn't go for 45 points. They had the miracle pass at the end of the game that certainly propelled them to that dub. but they gave it up. The bottom line is they gave it up. I think one thing that they could be it could be an issue for them is giving up anything that's a trick play. I'm not sure what South Carolina has up their sleeve offensively, but I think sometimes those things are foolish to try, but other times I think it's good to go against Ole Miss. If you're going to try to do anything, try to trick them. But I think physically they're a much more physical team on that side of the ball than they've been for a number of years.
Yeah, Shane's not averse to tricks. Usually it's a special teams trick, but you never know.
Right.
Yeah. Get you out of here. Excuse me, got about a minute and a half left. How big a blow was the Memphis loss to Navy? Because the Tigers were certainly looked at as one of the better, group of 5 teams with a chance to get to the playoff. Is this a run-the-table scenario from this point forward?
It is a run-the-table scenario and get some help to get to where they need to be. Look, the main goal for Memphis this year with a team that was expected to be really, really good and is really good, they got to get to the championship game. Anything else would be very disappointing if they didn't make the championship game. The cherry on top of the sundae, if you will, is getting to be that playoff team as the group of 5 representative. Right now, that seems to be far-fetched. They're probably 7th or 8th in order, including Navy and Army, which is new to the American, in their league alone. Tulane as well, and that's a team that they'll play later in the year. They don't have the luxury of playing Army. But, yeah, they were sort of in the same boat as Ole Miss. I've had people on our radio show call in and kind of make that connection there. They were shell-shocked as well. It's not just that they lost. They could not stop Navy. They had no answer for Navy after playing so well earlier in the year with the defense. I know Florida State's a shell of what they used to be, but to go down to Tallahassee and to limit that offense, it was really surprising to see Memphis struggle against Navy. So they need to get on a hot streak, and they're going to take this bye week, hopefully use it to their advantage, and be ready next week with a challenge in Tampa against South Florida.
Always a pleasure, sir. We seriously appreciate you. Our best to Eli as well in his golf game. Let him know we said hey, and we'll holler at you here soon enough.
Sounds great, guys. Thank you.
You bet. That's our buddy Greg Gaston. Greg underscore Gaston, he tried to say in English, on Twitter, Sports 56 in Memphis. You're listening to the Postgame Show. 11 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. Thanks again to Greg Gaston for joining us, Sports 56 in Memphis, giving us a little preview of what he sees for the Carolina Ole Miss game. Trickeration. How many fans listening went, yes,
I love trickeration.
Yeah.
Tomfoolery.
Yeah, I don't know
Shenanigans.
I don't know what they have up their sleeve. I come back around, and I know I've kind of gone all over the place with this, that, or the other in terms of what's most important. I don't know that there is one thing I'm going to put above any other, including, what Elijah has put in the poll question, which I'll have him revisit in just a second. But I just think a lot of this, Elijah, really does hinge on the state of mind Ole Miss brings into this football game. And maybe I'm overselling that point. There's a reason that you hear, don't let one loss beat you again.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many of those guys feel deflated. To Greg's point, you lose in Baton Rouge, or you lose at home to Georgia. Okay, but you were feeling great and riding high, and you lost to Kentucky. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but
It's not a total season ender, but it's a bad look, bad omen.
I've also brought up the 2009 game with Ole Miss a lot. And one thing I remember is watching the game, maybe even later that night, because it was a Thursday game, so we had a show Friday, obviously. But I remember Fowler and Herbstreit in their postgame. And I don't think Chris meant it to be like too much of a slam. But Ole Miss came into that game in the top 5. And he had kind of that Chris Fowler smirk that he'll get from time to time. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but those of you who may still have a copy of the game somewhere, if it's on YouTube, in postgame he said, look, Mississippi has all these things being said about them, but if you're going to be a really good team in this conference, you can't lose to South Carolina. And I knew what he meant. Like, Gamecock fans may take that kind of personally, but I would apply that to last week. Mm-hmm. Hey, Ole Miss. Now, and again, at least that game was in Columbia on a Thursday. And Eric Norwood, who was an All-American that season, went nuts on you. But, hey, Ole Miss, if you're going to be a thing in the Southeastern Conference, you can't lose at home to Kentucky.
Nope. You can't lose to a team that's going to finish like in the bottom half maybe of the SEC.
And so, again, I don't say that for anything other than just, observational discussion of what life is like in this conference, which is not going to be lost on anybody at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin or any of his players. But I do remember Chris Fowler saying that. And at first I remember thinking like, well, that's kind of a slam. But then I thought to myself as well, because Carolina wasn't yet where Carolina was going to be, say, 3 years from then, where it would have been perfectly acceptable. Because Georgia lost here, and Alabama lost here.
A lot of teams were
Florida
losing
lost here, and Tennessee lost here. Clemson lost here.
You were an SEC favorite.
So it got different, but then it wasn't, and Kentucky isn't there. So I just don't know what state of mind Ole Miss brings. And that's why one of the things I even asked you on Monday, how much of this is just about what's between their ears? Their football acumen is fine. What's their mental state? That's what I don't know yet.
And clearly the coaches felt the need to address it because Greg mentioned that they were told to stay off social media.
Yeah.
And honestly, that might not be a terrible idea given the passion of just any SEC fan base. And a disappointing loss like that, if you read certain things and you see certain things that are being told to you, after a while, you might start believing it. What they can't do, if you're Lane Kiffin and that coaching staff, you can't have them believe that they are 3 points worse than Kentucky. Really, if they execute the game plan and they don't commit stupid penalties, then and you are better on third down, you win that game. I mean, look, the secret to making Ole Miss only snap the ball 56 times is to make sure that they're 1 in 10 on third down.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. I mean, time of possession doesn't matter as much as the number of total run plays. And they ran the fewest plays that they had at any point during the season by a significant margin because they couldn't get off the field on third down. How much is that going to be sticking in their head whenever they get their first 3rd and 8 in a stadium where everybody is cheering against you?
Yeah.
And everybody is trying to make sure you cannot communicate to your teammates because that place is shaking, quite literally, or swaying, whatever adjective you like to use to describe
It ain't
what's
swaying.
gonna,
We ain't playing.
and I have a really good feeling it will be swaying on Saturday. So when does that football ghost start creeping into your mind when you get into that first 3rd down and it gets time to start executing the things that you're supposed to do as a team of that caliber, but you just didn't in a game that you really didn't need to lose?
I know they want fans to wear garnet. I know the game is sold out. Have we seen what the team is wearing yet? Have we seen the battle armor video yet?
I have not seen that just yet.
All right,
but I am eager.
Try to find that. We'll stay with the Gamecocks and the Rebels coming up next hour. Got a few NFL thoughts to get to. Wait till we tell you about Antonio Pierce's punishment. It's coming. 4 o'clock Thursday. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of the Postgame Show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios, downtown Columbia, South Carolina. He's Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us this afternoon, whether you're listening to us here, the PD, the Grand Strand, anywhere else on the app, on the web, wherever you might be. We appreciate you. Good weather this weekend coming up. We're almost there. And by that, I mean we're almost to the point where, you know, if it gets above 80, you're like, oh, well, that's not good.
Where I start wearing pants.
Almost there.
On a consistent basis.
Pants are overrated. Oh, you mean, okay, never mind.
You're not wrong, but it is nice to get to, to have to shield my legs from a cool breeze.
Yeah. What's going to be, I like the couple of month, maybe the month-ish amount of time where you can wear like the long sleeve T-shirt and shorts.
Oh, see, that's actually the perfect combo.
That's next week for
we
sure.
Are barreling our way into that.
You'll be seeing me, and that'll be next week's garb.
In honor of Pete Rose, that is sitting in my closet. And that weather in a week or two is Ray Fosse. We are barreling towards that. I'm so ready.
Yeah.
I'm so ready for sweatshirts and shorts. You have no idea.
That's coming. I mean, I think Monday, as Monday turns to Tuesday, lows in the 50s.
Oh, my God.
In Columbia, South
Now you're
Carolina.
talking dirty, Jay Phillips.
All right. Well, now I got to talk sad for a few minutes. Braves lose last night, 5-4. Good game. It's about look and if you didn't see it, Max Fried got popped right on the gluteus maximus. He even said got popped in the glute and some soreness. And in the second inning, it was clearly acting up on him. And then 6 straight hits by the Pods kind of blew it open early. Atlanta managed to crawl back, but ultimately fell 5-4. But a better game last night. Here's the thing that's hard for fans. This is a trick question, Elijah. So there's only one right answer that I know you're going to get.
I'll give you a trick answer.
Do you know who had the best starting rotation ERA in the National League?
Oh, that had to be the Atlanta
Braves. It's the Atlanta Braves. The Braves can pitch. The Braves can pitch. And the Braves bullpen was excellent as well. I had a buddy of mine call me Saturday, and he wasn't saying, like again, I saw some fans say it. It's Twitter, take it as you will, and I shouldn't always go into the comments, but sometimes I do. Not my own comments. Sometimes it'll be David O'Brien's comments or Mark Bowman's comments or whatever. I stay away from the team one, though.
It's where the real experts are.
Some of these people, I'm like, y'all, why do you even watch if you're this angry and negative? It's baseball, man. But anyway, I digress. The Braves can pitch, but a buddy of mine called me and he's like, I wanted to go to the playoffs, but I kind of don't. I'm like, no, you want them to go to the playoffs.
That's the whole point of sports, man.
That's what you're in it for, man. If you can't win a championship without being in the playoffs. That is also a fact.
Trent Dilfer would agree with that.
And so I thought, well, the Braves can pitch. And then Chris Sale can't go. And then Max Fried get 100-mile-an-hour ball right off his rear end. And, you got to use that muscle when you're pitching.
A butt injury playing a hand and ending the Braves season is quite a poetic way for that.
There's a Mark Sanchez joke in there somewhere.
Somewhere.
I don't know.
A meme at the bare minimum.
But you do, believe it or not, you do need that muscle if you're a pitcher. And if it's sore and you're losing 5 miles of velocity, it could end up being a thing. And it was last night. I tweeted it out. I wasn't alone. That may, and in fact, I think it is. It's certainly, I do not think it's a 50-50 proposition. I think it's greater that Max has pitched his final game as an Atlanta Brave. And he was very emotional in the postgame last night at his locker. You may get a sense of that, the Braves drafted him. I know he's a Southern California kid, but the Braves drafted him, and he's been in the organization the whole time. He's been very good. He was the game winner when Atlanta won the World Series. I know his playoff ERA is not very good. That's unfortunate. It happens. Some guys are really good in the playoffs. Some guys aren't. But he'll always have, WP, Game 6, 21 World Series, Max Fried. And he's
trivia question answer.
Yeah, and he's been really, really good, man. He's a very good pitcher. He's not Tom Glavine or John Smoltz or Greg Maddux, but he will go down as one of the Braves. Braves are good, man, and they've had a lot of good starting pitchers through the years. He's going to be one of them. He will be remembered fondly if he has pitched his last game as a Brave. So, and I mentioned earlier about Charlie Morton. Charlie's going to be 41 next season, made $20 million this year. He's serviceable. He's above average, maybe only slightly. But you do, listen, pretty soon here, Elijah, they're going to have to re-sign Ozzie Albies. They're going to have to re-sign Ronald Acuna, who are currently on very team-friendly long-term deals. You got a question with Jorge Soler and Marcell Ozuna, who both are going to make about the same amount of money next year. Neither one of them can play a lick of defense.
The grand pianos that are out.
That's what I said. Yes.
Yeah.
If you've never heard me say before, I give my analogy to their ability to play defense is that a grand piano, if you leave the, whatever you call that thing, if you leave it open and propped up and you sit it in left field, it's going to catch about as many fly balls as Marcell Ozuna will.
Has the same range.
And for Soler, you could put 2. Because he's
a little more range.
He can cover just a little bit more ground. So you could put 2 grand pianos in left field, and it'll catch about as many fly balls. I'm really not even kidding by that much, to be honest with you. I'm really not.
They're not being signed or traded for because of what they do out in the field.
They cannot play the outfield, man. And the Braves obviously have a very expensive first baseman who's not going anywhere, even though he needs to hit a little bit better, Matt Olson. They got questions. What about Jared Kelenic? Again, you traded some pieces for him thinking, all right, it's going to come around. He fits in spurts, but not the consistency that you were hoping for from a kid who had high expectations when he was drafted out in Seattle. You got to stay healthy. Is Acuna going to be okay? This is the second major surgery for him. Mm-hmm. Ozzie is such a gamer. Ozzie doesn't. I'm not going to liken him directly to Pete Rose, but you'll understand my point. Ozzie just goes, man. He just plays hard, and that's going to get you hurt from time to time.
He plays in the spirit of Pete Rose.
Yeah. The Braves need they got a good defensive shortstop in Orlando Arcia, but if he's not protected offensively, I mean, he was brutal this year.
His liability.
His on base percentage was under 300.
Ew.
I mean, that's gross.
That's foul.
Yeah. You can't have that. Especially, once you get to the bigs, it's funny. High school, your shortstop is your best player. College, it might be. By the time you get to the bigs, rare is the day anymore now where, the shortstop is, the high school shortstop, Because in high school, that's just the best athlete on the team, too.
Yeah.
Well, just let him play shortstop.
Derek Jeters ain't walking through that door.
There's just not a lot of Derek Jeters anymore. There's not a lot of Cal Ripkens anymore. Heck, even the Braves moved Chipper Jones immediately. As soon as he was called up back in the 90s, you're going to play third base. All he had ever done was play shortstop. Now you don't. It was that easy.
That throw to first is going to be a little longer.
So they have a lot of questions. Again, if you don't bring Fried back, you got to replace him with somebody. It's going to be an interesting offseason for a team that will spend. I forget where the Braves rank in payroll, 8th maybe, but well over $200 million in payroll. So what they did this season, considering, is good, but the expectation is to win the East, and it's time for the Braves to advance again. It's been a while, but I'm absorbing it as best I can.
That's a fair way to handle that loss. Just because, look, with most teams that have the amount of injuries to very important players, like the Braves do, and did for the course of an entire season, don't make the playoffs. Those teams just don't, right? That's There are a lot of teams in the National League that have had serious injuries and that kept them from the playoffs, and that will keep them from the playoffs, right? It is a good testament to the depth that they had this year and the willingness to trade for pieces, even though you didn't really have much in your farm system to trade away, But for the future, I think I'd be a little more optimistic. The Acuna question's a big one because this is what both ACLs now have been torn,
Yes,
and surgically repaired.
yes,
That's scary, but I still think you got a couple more good years.
and within the last
medals.
3 years.
Yeah, there was kind of that issue with Derrick Rose, right? I mean, he had toward 2 different ACLs in a span of 3 years and was never the same athletically. Maybe Ronald Acuna is a little different. That's a fair concern. But I still think that as an organization, the Ducks are in the row well enough to be able to bounce back next year. And if you're able to stay even remotely healthy, you're going to compete for the division title.
They will. I do believe that. Again, if you,
That's all you can ask.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. Nacho Alvarez is the kid. He got a little call up, but he was just kind of overmatched at the plate.
Wasn't ready.
Yeah, he was not ready, and I'd be curious to see what they do with him to be ready to be the shortstop next season, or at least have some role at the big club next season. But they'll make Max Fried an offer. What you don't want to hear is that they just make a token offer.
A non-serious
because
offer.
they kind of did that with Dansby, and I think I don't know if they're regretting not signing Dansby, but Dansby Swanson got $5 million more per season from the Cubs. The Braves just weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
The Braves offered him a 5-year, $100 million deal. The Cubs gave him $5 and $125. I'm taking the $25 extra million.
Absolutely. But I think if you're the
duh.
Braves, or if you're the Cubs, I think you might be regretting giving him that much because he has not been great.
He's not, and they're not very good, and that's just it.
And part of the reason why they might not be very good is because they will be allocating under $25 million to Dansby Swanson over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that there might be a little bit of correlation, causation.
I think there is. And again, Dansby was protected at the plate in Atlanta in ways he is not in Chicago.
He's relied upon to be one of the best hitters in Chicago,
and
which he is not.
That's on the Cubs, because Dansby, like a lot of guys these days, is there a pitch coming? I'm going to swing at it. Is it in the strike zone? I don't know.
See ball, swing at ball.
Yes.
Don't care where.
That's what he does, man. All right, we'll see. But Braves fans, if you're like me, hey, made the playoffs. Rough year.
That's a win in itself.
February will be here soon enough.
Given the context, I think this is a successful season.
I would agree. All right, Gamecocks want to make it a successful season in football. Lulu Keston's going to join us. She is on the beat covering the Gamecocks for the Greenville News, and she's got the latest on what's going on looking ahead to Saturday. Be right back.
It is already October, meaning the holiday season is vastly approaching, and before you know it, it's going to be here. And a lot of you have weight loss goals you would like to achieve before we get to Thanksgiving, before we get to Christmas. And even though the buy one, get one offer for Columbia Secret for Weight Loss has expired, there's still a perfect time to be able to join the program right now and achieve your weight loss goal by the time we get to the holidays. And you might be thinking, Elijah, I got a pretty big goal here. I don't know if I can get it in time for the holidays, but if I can be proof of anything, it's the proof of concept of Columbia Secret for Weight Loss and being able to do it in a timely manner. I lost 20 pounds in my first month of using Columbia Secret for Weight Loss, and Paul, Grant, and Shaylin can do the same thing for you. No pills, no shots, just great coaching and being able to help create habits that will last you a healthy lifetime. That sounds good to you? Give them a call, 803-824-4210. Again, 803-824-4210 or ColumbiaSecretForWeightLoss.com. Results may vary.
18 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Thursday afternoon. Again, I don't do math.
Boo this man.
I'm in the word business. Numbers hurt my head.
Apparently the time business either.
Well, I can just look at the clock and try to say it the right way, but what's the point?
Does anybody really know what time it is?
No, they don't, Chicago.
Does anybody really care?
I did count how many Ole Miss players are on the availability report.
Ooh, and it didn't take you an hour?
25.
All right.
25. I said it was 20-ish, so I was right about
You
that.
eyeballed that really well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
He's Elijah. I'm Jay. Appreciate you being with us, and we welcome on to the program for the very first time. Excited about this. Lulu Kesson. She is on the beat for the Greenville News, covering the South Carolina Gamecocks, and we appreciate her time. Welcome aboard. Thank you for the afternoon and the opportunity. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
All right. Availability report. Carolina's got 6 people on it, I think. Yeah, 5. Ja'Kai Moore out. Kelvin Hunter, doubtful. And then, Lulu, I'll start you with these. Raheem Sanders, Jared Brown, Lenoris Sellers, questionable. Help us maybe decode what you think questionable might mean here on Thursday afternoon for those big 3.
I'm not the least bit surprised that they're listed as questionable, just because Beamer had said earlier in the presser on Tuesday that they weren't 100% yet. And I think even if they were if they are 98% ready to go, that South Carolina would still list them as questionable just to be safe. It's definitely kind of hard to figure out what to believe, because the week before, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, it sounded like Lenoris Sellers would be ready to go for week 4, and then obviously he was in a boot on the sidelines. So I would say Lenoris, I expect to play a little bit more than Rocket, but that's just because Lenoris has had more time to recover. That being said, I think that either of them could be a toss-up, and at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they do still both play Saturday.
Lulu, I really enjoyed reading your story, trying to go inside the mind of Shane Beamer, where it's pretty well chronicled how unsuccessful some of the Octobers have been, especially recently, as of last year, not going 0 for October, and really kind of chronicling how Shane goes through a lot of the mistakes in his mind and in trying to get better and learn from a lot of those mistakes maybe that he's made early in his coaching tenure here at South Carolina. But when putting that together, what's maybe one of the main things that you learned about his process and maybe the steps he's taking with him and the coaching staff to try to avoid going 0 for October in a month where you play 3 really good football teams?
Yeah, I definitely think when I was writing that, you kind of learn how attentive he is, and obviously you have to be if you're a head coach. But I think particularly when Shane talked about even the schedule adjustments, like something as small as, hey, in August, we're going to have the same exact schedule we're going to have throughout the entire season. Little things like that, I think it's sort of like a level of care and an attention to detail that they're hoping makes a long-lasting impact. And, I mean, it's a tough October schedule this year, but it's also the best start that South Carolina's had since 2017. So it's sort of like, it's easy to point to those small things like a schedule change or Shane taking really attentive notes and making small adjustments here and there, kind of those accountability things that I pointed out, and being like, hey, they're working because South Carolina is off to a 3-1 start. But at the same time, it's kind of like if things don't go as well this year, it's not like they're playing, the bottom tier of SEC teams in October. They have 3 top 25 opponents ahead of them. But at the same time, I think, you see how vulnerable South Carolina is when they make mistakes, and you see how impressionable Beamer is when he makes when he corrects his mistakes. So it was kind of cool to think about that as a program as a whole. They'll learn from kind of what's gone badly in the past, and they're sort of lucky that they have a lot to learn about in terms of what went wrong in October and how they can correct that this year.
Talking to Lulu Kesson on the beat for the Greenville News, covering Carolina. Again, Gamecocks and Ole Miss, 3:30 Saturday, 10:30 coverage starting right here on the game in Columbia. Lulu, when you look at this right now, as you begin to prepare some of your own storylines for this game, I'll say one of the things that Elijah and I have discussed a lot this week is how Ole Miss comes into this game mentally. And if they are, this is me talking now, if they are challenged by their head coach Lane Kiffin in a way I think they will in terms of back against the wall, can Carolina, whose back won't be against the wall, find a way to match that? What are you learning about where you think this Gamecock team is mentally in terms of this level of opportunity and the rest of October in front of them?
Yeah, I think mentality for both teams, I'm not going to say it's the deciding factor, but I think it plays a huge role. I won't lie, I do think it's tricky and it potentially might be the worst case scenario for South Carolina that Ole Miss just lost to Kentucky. It's really hard to think that Ole Miss drops 2 games in a row. And I think South Carolina is going to see an angry, especially Ole Miss offense that sort of underwhelmed last week. That being said, I think on the flip side, South Carolina may kind of take the mentality like, hey, it might look really bad if we kind of destroyed Kentucky and then we can't beat a team that Kentucky beat. So you kind of can play the mental game with both. But I think against LSU, South Carolina started making mental mistakes when LSU got back into the game. So I think it's more so right now and in terms of October, going to look at how did South Carolina learn from certain mistakes against LSU specifically, and can South Carolina productively play in a close SEC game? Because honestly, they haven't really had that yet. Like, they kind of took care of Kentucky in like early third quarter, and it really looked like Kentucky gave up. But against LSU, you saw South Carolina just go back and forth, and then they kind of shot themselves in the foot. So it'll be interesting to see if it is a close game and it's a competitive game, how South Carolina takes care of it, both like in a mature way and just like cleaning up a lot of mental mistakes that they've made in the past.
And Lulu, this is kind of the poll question we had for the day on Twitter. We asked, Gamecock fans what maybe the biggest concern for them going into this game against Ole Miss is. And the 4 that we posed personally, Lenora Sellers' health, the South Carolina offensive line versus Ole Miss's pass rush, the tempo that Ole Miss plays with, and tackling, which is definitely kind of a theme between Clayton White and Shane Beamer that they discussed as things that can be issues against this Ole Miss team. But when you hear those 4, what do you think might be the biggest concern for South Carolina in a game of this magnitude?
I want to say more so Lenora Sellers and just like passing game related, because I think while South Carolina's defense as a whole has not, it's not perfect, I think the defensive unit has stepped up in bigger moments and has been more consistent. So while the tempo of Ole Miss's offense is elite, and South Carolina has had some bad missed tackles and some long passes, allowed in the secondary, I think it really comes down to how healthy is Lenora Sellers, because South Carolina is going to need to throw and run the ball. And I just think that anyone would probably agree that Lenora is a more confident passer than Robbie Ashford, and that just improves South Carolina's offensive versatility by far with Sellers out there.
Lulu, I'm going to ask you a question I asked our buddy Pete Iacobelli yesterday. South Carolina wins if they blank.
If they don't have many self-inflicted errors, and if Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart step up, and particularly Dylan Stewart, who is sort of invisible in the LSU game, if he's able to be on his A game, I think South Carolina has a chance of taking the win.
When you look at it from that perspective, let's flip it around to Mississippi, and we've talked about their mental fortitude at this point in time. How much do you think Lane Kiffin allows the Juice Wells angle to play into a game like this? We've had some conversations about, does Lane overthink it in terms of that? What are you looking at from that perspective?
Yeah, the whole Juice aspect is interesting. I think at the end of the day, it's really going to matter, like, his first two plays, because I think Lane could easily see Juice impacted by the moment and have him on a short leash, if that makes sense. But I also think that he could trust him to really feed into the moment and sort of really get under the skin of not only everyone in Williams-Brice Stadium, but also the South Carolina defense as well. And then you obviously have a player that really knows their opponent, and Juice is obviously very familiar with South Carolina, so he may play into that as well. But I do think it kind of it'll show early, I imagine, how Juice performs against his old team, whether he steps up to the moment or is too kind of lost in the mental game of it all.
Well, there's no doubt that Lane loves to get under people's skin.
It's kind of his thing.
Just be a gnat flying around in the car. You just can't quite get it because, you still got to drive. Like, it'll be something like that. Lulu, it was great to have you on the show. We'll do it again very soon. We appreciate you. Enjoy the ball game this weekend, all right?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and have a great rest of your day.
You bet. That's Lulu Kessin. That's how you follow her on Twitter as well, Kesin. Good stuff.
Yeah, awesome stuff there.
Yeah,
if you haven't had a chance, read the story about Shane Beamer and how he kind of reflects on his mistakes. It was, pretty insightful.
It's good. And I think she's like a lot of us this week. I do. I think the mental approach means a little more this week than it does in other weeks. Got some NFL things to get to, and really a blend of college and NFL. Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Raiders, isn't coaching in college again anytime soon. Wait till you find out why.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways. We're going to start here in Richland County. Got an accident on Atlas Road at US 76 and Garner's Ferry Road. Got one on Harbison Boulevard at I-26. Another one on 77 southbound at Percival Road near exit 15. One on Longtown Road at Killian Road. One on Sparkleberry Lane at Clemson Road. Another one on Sumter Street at Taylor Street. And in Lexington County, we have accidents on Woodbury Road at Jessamine Road. 2 Notch Road at Highway 6 in South Lake Drive. 26 eastbound at St. Andrews Road near exit 106. And on 20 eastbound at I-26 near exit 64.
We were talking some Gamecock football with Lulu Kesson of the Greenville News. Appreciate her time. We'll get you some more sound from Carolina coaches and players coming up in just a little bit. And Elijah's got a poll question running around out there for you as well. We were talking some NFL tonight. Again, last week we had a good game, at least on paper, right? Dallas and the Giants. That's one of your
good
better
helmet game.
Yeah, it's one of your better NFL rivalries and certainly longtime NFC East rivalry. Tonight, we kind of get back into kind of boring Thursday night football as your Atlanta Falcons
Boo.
host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then I got to talking with Elijah this morning. And listen, some of you, like our dear colleague Tyler Head, my good friend and former colleague Brent Johnson. They're the only 2 Falcon fans I know, actually.
My co-host on the Friday night shows, Justin Hall,
is a Falcon fan.
Yeah. Unfortunately for him, I see he was wearing Falcons merch in the studio just this past week.
I don't even know if Tyler does. Tyler even have any Falcons merch?
He does, but I might have breached some level of trust there by saying that. But there are some jerseys, not just merch, jerseys that one Tyler Head still owns.
Of whom?
Can you guess?
Steve Bartkowski?
Yes, actually, that's it.
That's all I can think of.
Close. Matt Ryan.
Okay. Matty Ice was good for a few years.
You won an MVP.
No, he was good. He was good. I kid because I care. But I did ask Elijah.
I just throw shade.
And look, this again, so I don't want anybody to get mad at me, but you might. But I said Atlanta and sorry, Panther fans. Like Atlanta and the Panthers are like 2 of the most just boring teams in the NFL. And then I included, and it's not Elijah's favorite team, but it's a town, that he's worked in for many years, but the Titans. Like they're just like the Panthers had about 5 years of relevance. I know they went to another Super Bowl back in the day, but when Cam was there, and remember, even when Cam was there, they never had back-to-back winning seasons. I think they had an 8-8 in there somewhere. So, like, who are the most? I mean, anybody agree, disagree? Like, they're just. It's like they're just there. Like again, even in Atlanta, nobody really seems to care. Like I know there's fans. I'm overplaying it on purpose, but like I've said to you many times, and Tyler agrees, and he's from Georgia. In Atlanta, in Metro Atlanta, the number 1 sports entity, without question, is Georgia Bulldog football, and the number 2 sports entity, without question, is the Atlanta Braves. And then everything else just kind of falls into place depending on who's doing what.
Georgia football, spring football.
Probably.
That's number 3.
I mean, I think people look around and go, oh, the Hawks. I forgot about that.
People go to the Hawks games because of who's playing the Hawks, not so they can watch the Atlanta Hawks.
I think there might be times when, and I'm serious, Atlanta United is now 3rd on the list.
Hey, they sell that place out.
And they've won titles.
They're good.
But who are the like? If we had a top 5, who are the top 5 most bored? If we agree, do we agree?
Yes.
Do you and I agree on those 3?
Yeah, Panthers,
Titans.
Falcons,
Falcons, and Titans.
Yeah, I I excluded the Falcons from my list on this one just because this year's team might be a little fun to watch. I mean, still too soon to tell.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed watching some of Kirk Cousins. I don't really, well, let me rephrase this. I don't enjoy watching the Falcons play football because I hate them. I don't enjoy it, right?
But you're
I
a
hate
Saints
watch.
fan.
Yeah,
You're
I
a Saints
hate
fan,
watch.
and that's fair.
But they're fascinating.
But even if they're not good, or even if they are good, like I mean, nobody's going, oh yeah, you know who's getting the Falcons? Like nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're not the most popular team in your own city as like a sports entity in the NFL, then you're kind of behind the eight ball because almost every, and like at least 25 teams and 25 markets, those teams are the biggest show in town. But I did replace them with the Cleveland Browns. I think the Cleveland Browns are more unwatchable.
Okay.
They are pretty unwatchable. If, at one point, we're going to have the Steelers and Browns play, and it's a fantastic pro sports rivalry, but I can't watch either of those teams play football. The Steelers at least win, and the defense is still really cool, right? Because they hold teams to 13 points a game, and they just smother you. But I cannot, for the life of me, watch a team Iowa themselves all the way to another 11, 12-win season. I can't. I don't want to watch that. There's enough of that in college football. I don't want to see that in the pros. I would like to see a team that is like an 11 or 12 win team score some bleeping points. So whenever the Steelers and Browns inevitably play on prime time this year, I ain't watching. Not going to do that to myself. I'm a sicko, but I'm not that ill. And
you could say like in today's, and I'm not going to include them because of history, because it's not all about just their current status. It's really more like who they are, just in terms of routine national relevance. So like the Patriots aren't very good right now, and even at their pinnacle, you might have said they played a rather boring brand of football.
Yeah,
but they won.
They won, and
they are far more relevant than any of those. So so I'm not even really going for that. It's just like I don't know if the Cardinals are in that boat. Until Harbaugh, I would have said the Chargers are in that boat. It's like, the Chargers, that's right. There's a
Jacksonville Jaguars. Definitely. The Jaguars and Titans used to be like the quintessential Thursday night game where they'd make them wear ugly uniforms and play each other. So then it's like ugly uniforms, ugly football. There are dozens of people in the stands to watch this game.
And yet there's still 12 million watching on television.
Somehow, because
they're all degenerate gamblers.
The football watching public, so they're sickos that live amongst us.
They're just degenerates, man.
And you can point them out if they're spending a Thursday night of their lives watching every snap of Titans Jags, then that they can fall into that category pretty easily. Now there's some teams that if they're playing in prime time this year, I'm not going to watch because they make me mad, even with no emotional affiliation. And now that's the Dolphins. Congratulations, Miami. Watching you not be able to get a backup quarterback who can give Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle the ball is like someone buying a Rolls Royce, never putting gas in it, and just letting it sit in their front yard to rust in front of God and all creation.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
That's what the Miami Dolphins are to me right now. It's horrible to watch. I can't do it.
Yeah, but it doesn't make them boring. It just I know I get your point. I don't know. It's maybe hard to figure out I just like bless the Falcons' hearts. They're just, even when they go to the Super Bowl, it's like, oh, yeah.
Well, that Super Bowl
Atlanta has a team
because they gagged away a 25-point lead I don't know,
but
into the game.
For whatever it's worth. Even though
that's entertaining.
I guess it's because the Falcons are at home. They are 2.5-point favorites tonight over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 3-1. And the Falcons 2-2. You know where they've lost their games? At home.
They played a lot of home games.
So yeah, they've three of their four. Yeah, 3 of their 4, and now 4 of 5 tonight. That'll be on Prime. I may go to Prime tonight, but if you didn't see my tweet the other day, or if you didn't see the James Bond tweet the other day, all of the James Bond films.
No way.
Only for a limited time. I don't know how limited. For a limited time, all James Bond films are on Prime Video.
Gonna make me go on a serious James Bond.
The thing is, I have most of them on DVD, but I'm so lazy. I don't want to put a DVD into the DVD anymore because I stream everything. And just give me what if I called the Bond people or MGM or whoever, and hey, here's proof that I own all these DVDs. Can you just stream them for me somewhere?
Hook me up.
You know? They should do that for me.
I mean, there are some.
I spent the money.
Get you a Vudu account, man. That's what my brother does. He has not bought a hard copy of a movie in a long time.
Legal?
It's very legal, yeah. And some of those, you can buy like the movie on there if you can prove that you have like the DVD.
Oh, I can prove it.
He has some Blu-ray, films that he's got. That, like there's like a QR code. You scan the QR code. You log into your Vudu account and it automatically downloads it in there because you have proof that you bought it.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
You had to explain more of that for me. All right.
Yeah.
Come back on the other side. I'll get you into this Antonio Pierce story. The head coach of the Raiders used to be an assistant for Herm Edwards at Arizona State. He ain't going back to college coaching probably ever anyway, but just wait till you hear a few of the things that he's been accused of. You'll get it when the postgame show returns. 11 minutes in front of 5 o'clock here on a Thursday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Headlines of the day coming up. More on the Gamecocks with sound from Dow Loggins and Clayton White. Drive around the SEC as well. As promised, the current head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce, was today hit by the NCAA with an 8-year show cause penalty. Yes, that's a really, really, really long time for a show cause. I mean, at that point, you may as well just say, you know what, you're never coaching again, which he was probably not coming back to coaching in college anyway.
But the old Alabama baseball coach who was giving inside information got 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's for a frame of reference.
And it's bad, man. I had no idea. I mean, it's bad. He was associate head coach at Arizona State during the time that these infractions occurred. I'm going to read here from Dan Morrison of On3 Sports. During that time, the NCAA says Pierce violated the principles of ethical conduct for impermissible recruiting activities during the COVID-19 dead period. According to the NCAA, the majority of those violations related to a scheme that saw Pierce and other staff members team up with a booster and arrange unofficial visits for the dead period during COVID-19. Among the activities that occurred during those visits were tryouts, football facility tours, and entertainment for 35 prospects and their families.
Entertainment, you say?
Free meals, apparel, airfare, and or lodging for 27 prospects were also provided, often in collaboration with the booster, who the NCAA says was the parent of a then football student athlete in the program. But here's the rest of the story, as the late Paul Harvey would have said. On top of these activities occurring during a dead period, the meals, travel expenses, and entertainment are all considered impermissible recruiting inducements. The entertainment itself included taking a prospect's, singular, parents, plural, to a gentleman's club.
Nothing says, I want your son to play for me, like taking them to a strip club. Nothing. I mean, I'm about willing to bet that the child of those parents is playing for the Arizona State Sun Devils right now. How could you say no? Maybe Antonio Pierce just opened himself up to be eligible to be an assistant basketball coach at Louisville. Hey, yo.
How fun would it have been anyway to go to the strip club during COVID?
It's definitely a different strip club experience. It would have to be.
But and like the mom wanted to go?
Maybe it was her idea.
Because that's how it's been. I mean, I've seen 2 reports about this. It says, again, the entertainment included taking a prospect's parents to a gentleman's club. A singular prospect's parents, plural.
The 2 parents and 1 child.
I got to tell you, I've covered college football a long time, and I've heard stories. I can't recall ever hearing, and I'm not saying this is a first. I can't recall ever hearing that you took the parents, plural, to the club. But I have no idea if it worked or not. Also, a lot of other coaches who were snagged, if you will, in this investigation said that Coach Pierce was the ringleader. So that he's basically like, listen, I don't care to what's about these rules.
About rules or suggestions.
They claim, again, reading verbatim here, Dan Morrison, they claim that he directed actions and that, quote, they feared that not complying with Pierce's directives would result in losing their jobs. On top of that, Pierce is also accused of directing assistants to tamper with players on other rosters.
He says, I can't do it, but you guys can.
I mean, this is seriously, and look, He's coaching the Raiders. He's making a lot of money.
He ain't ever coming back.
They don't have to worry about any of this. But this is seriously, this is some bad stuff. And that's what we cover primarily. We cover college football. Think of the rules, whatever you think of the rules. I don't care. The rules are the rules.
I don't think they've been abused like that.
This is bad.
And Herm Edwards knew what was going on. He knew it was going down.
You play to win the game.
No, there was a lot of games being won right there, but not on a football field.
I hope they had a good time at the club. I hope it was worth it.
And it only cost him 8-year show cause penalty.
Whew. There you go. Antonio Pierce, man.
Must be a hell of a club.
Better be.
I want to know which one it is now.
It's in the greater Phoenix area. It's a big
Go look
city.
on Yelp.
Yeah, go find that out. Headlines and more coming up. When you're not feeling really good, it's back, neck, shoulder, joint pain. Get back in the game as quickly as you can with our friends at the Joint Chiropractic Centers. You can be in and out quickly. You won't miss work. You won't miss your lunch hour even. They're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 7. Saturdays, 10 until 4. No appointments are ever necessary. Don't have to worry about insurance. If you've never been, you have some questions and concerns. For just $29, your initial visit includes a consultation, an exam, and an adjustment. And again, no appointment is ever necessary. Soon enough here, football fans, you'll be traveling out of town perhaps to see your team in action. Well, there's Joint Chiropractic Centers all across the country for work. Whatever you're doing, vacation, need a little something, they've got you covered. Here in Columbia, Harbison Boulevard, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch off Killian, and across the river on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. And Bob Keene and his wife Janet want to remind you at the Joint, you don't have to feel bad to feel better.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to, they're causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. We'll start here in Richland County. Got an accident on Browning Road near Burning Tree Road. Got another one on I-77 northbound approaching Killian Road near exit 22. And another one on Longtown Road at Killian Road. In Lexington County, we have two accidents to get to. One on Oak Drive near US 1 at Augusta Road. And the other one on Highway 6 near Bethany Church and Pleasant View Drive.
It is 5 o'clock news time here on a Thursday. Welcome back in. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. We'll start you with what's going on around Carolina football as the Gamecocks get ready to take on the Ole Miss Rebels Saturday afternoon. We'll start with some sound here from Dowell Loggins, who is, we talked about this a bunch. Carolina needs to stay on the field. Third down conversion rate, not great so far. Here's Dowell on the importance, in his opinion, of making sure you can sustain your drives.
I mean, and I don't know what's going on with their offense. I just know that they're very good. I'm not dumb. I hear things and see things, and we get them some crossover tape. So we obviously know what's going on the other side. But for our side, it's do your job and execute and win your one-on-one matchups. And it is important. It is important to be able to convert third downs. It's an area we need to improve on. We haven't been good enough this season. It's continue to run the ball well. It's continue to create explosive plays and minimize the turnovers. Like, you can't give these guys short fields, and you need to convert third downs. You need to be able to run the ball well. And the other thing Kentucky did is they hit some explosive plays that you're going to have to do, and they won some one-on-one matchups. And so that element is always a huge challenge, but you're talking about playing company football in all three phases, and that becomes a bigger issue every week in this conference.
South Carolina, Elijah, has shown that they can hit some explosives, and they've done it against pretty much everybody they've played, including a couple against LSU, which was a big deal. You don't necessarily – listen, there's plenty of plays that any guy like Dowell draws up where you want to score. Sometimes, yes, you're just trying to literally get a yard, fourth and short, or some such, right? But a lot of times the play is designed for you to bang, go. Let's beat the defense. I'm curious to see, again, depending on personnel and a few other issues, what that looks like. But I've gotten to a point, is this fair, where I'm expecting a few of those every game now because they've shown they can do it. And I don't know if anybody is prepared to always stop it if you've got the personnel. I guess the difference is the guys that have given you most of those explosives are still a little bit banged up.
Yeah, they are considered questionable as of last night's availability report. No, that's a totally fair expectation, especially from what you've seen from some of your emerging, pass-catching targets like Mazio Bennett, what you saw from Gage Larvidan now that he's healthy enough to get targets. What you saw from him against Akron should make you feel a little better that he can contribute to the offense a little bit in that big play category that some of these receivers maybe have now shown that they can stretch the field a little bit. Jared Brown and Lenoris connected on that deep ball in the first half of the LSU game. And that's the last of Lenoris we have seen. I mean, it's wild to think about, but we have not seen Lenoris Sellers, take a snap since the first half of the game on September 14th. Feels like a long time ago, but that have not seen him since. But to expect that now, I think is totally fair. And if you've
got a good enough sample size, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yes, I think Lenoris not playing against Akron is a setback, and the bye week, is just another week where he's not playing in actual game of football. And again, he hasn't taken a snap in a football game since September 14th. So maybe there might be a slow start to getting him reacclimated into the offense. But the hope is that you've been able to maintain that chemistry in practice long enough to where you can act upon that actual, expectation that you can hit some explosive plays down the field.
Flipping the script, Clayton White was asked about defending mobile quarterbacks, and certainly Lenoris or Robbie Ashford can do that. Jackson Dart has certainly got some wheels. He's not always going to go out and maybe look like a pure dual-threat quarterback, but Clayton asked on what you need to do to defend that type of guy.
To me, it's making sure our guys understand the situation of the game, understand when a quarterback has a higher percentage to run or to use his feet, and make sure we understand our rush lanes. So it's about learning. It's educating our players first and foremost on just the game and the situations and where they like their quarterback, what type of quarterback he is, where does he scramble, does he step up, does he scramble to the left, does he scramble to the right. So our front seven coaches kind of break that down. I kind of break down when and where they like to run the quarterback, certain formations. So it's all about educating and learning our players, learning and teaching our players so they can kind of, adapt it on the field and also teach it back to it.
And this comes back around to one of the things is it not only know where you need to be and what the situation is, but then complete the task. You got to tackle. Like, that's why your poll question today is great, and I'm just all over the place with check boxes on what I think the biggest things are.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about the football. Other times it's about between the ears. How much does between the ears affect the football? I don't want to overstate the importance of this game for both of these teams, but I really do look at it, Elijah. Like I said, it's kind of like a Carolina-Kentucky game, but different. And now we saw what Kentucky did. And I think it's because Kentucky looked at Mississippi and said, hey, if we're going to ever be considered as something like Tennessee or Georgia or Florida or Bama, you got to beat Mississippi. And I think the same thing is true for South Carolina. It's not a knock. It's the life that you lead in the middle of the pack in the SEC. You don't climb out of it by losing to the teams that are still in the middle of the pack.
Right. And, I mean, there's a lot of,
and I know today, by the way, Mississippi's not in the middle, but typically they are.
Typically, yes, it's a cyclical nature, and Ole Miss will not have a roster that's talented. I believe next year we don't know what the transfer portal holds or what off-season acquisitions are going to be made by Ole Miss. But
or
I think
Lane Kiffin to Florida.
By a coaching change, could also make them not as good next year as this year. Ole Miss is certainly in win now mode, but when looking at that poll question, I mean, to me, the number one thing is tackling. I think if you can keep yourself in the game by utilizing your strength, which is the defense, I think they're going to be able to get pressure on Dart. But Dart's going to be able to get the ball out quick. Ole Miss is really good at that. If you can make Trey Harris on his 9-10 catches in this game not go for a bajillion yards because he's breaking tackles. Now, he does average about 2 missed tackles forced a game. So he can make guys miss. Mm-hmm. But if you keep maybe the 7-8 yard receptions stay 7-8 yards as opposed to 27 or 37 yard plays, then you limit those explosives, and then you're going to do it exactly what Kentucky did and stay in the game, because there's going to be some third downs where they might throw the ball a little bit short of the sticks. You got to be able to make some tackles in the open field for the secondary to be able to keep Ole Miss from running 80 plays and doing exactly what they want to do on offense.
More on this game and sound from the coaches and players coming up in just a little bit. Meanwhile, continuing our integrated media headlines of the day, this is a pretty big deal, y'all. I don't know exactly what it's going to mean, but Ralph Russo of The Athletic reporting that the lead attorney in the Ed O'Bannon case, that's the one that was the video game case. Ed O'Bannon, the former UCLA star, suing the NCAA over the lack of money that he and others received for their name, image, and likeness in the old NCAA basketball game. And, of course, it then was applied to everything going on like that in NIL. Well, that lead attorney, Michael Housefield, has now filed an objection to the new House versus NCAA settlement, the big one that we've been talking about. It's the $2.78 billion settlement that has been agreed upon, and Judge Claudia Wilkin, who, interestingly enough, heard that O'Bannon case now more than 10 years ago, still wants a little bit more information on. Let me read verbatim here. Ralph Russo writes, Housefield and his firm filed documents late Wednesday night to the U.S. District Court of Northern California arguing the damages portion of the settlement is too low. The cap on the proposed revenue sharing system with athletes is unlawful, and restrictions placed on booster-funded NIL collectives are unfair. Quote, the settlements involve illusory, contradictory, and overreaching terms. Approval of them should be denied. According to this filing, it was made on behalf of 7 past, present, or future college athletes, most notably former Iowa basketball player Jordan Bohannon, who has been very critical of the NCAA over the last few years. He played at Iowa from 16 to 22. And, of course, the NCAA lifted its ban on athlete compensation after COVID in 2021. Says Jeffrey Kessler, who is the lead attorney for the plaintiffs in the settlement and wants the settlement, quote, we have negotiated an almost $3 billion settlement for college athletes. The Housefield firm never obtained anything for damages class in the case against the NCAA. We are confident our settlement is a landmark achievement for athletes that should be approved. So it's interesting, Elijah, in the sense that the attorney filing the objection and the opposition is one of the most successfully instrumental attorneys in changing the landscape of college sports. Now, what this exactly means, I have no idea. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to get into the other weeds here of a lot of the details. You can find it. Ralph Russo is one of the absolute best in the business at doing this. Longtime AP writer, again, now writing for The Athletic. But it's a big name. It's not just some guy. And I don't think that'll be lost on Judge Wilkin. Precedent matters in legal systems, even if the precedent might just be someone who's argued before her successfully. Like, well, he made a pretty good case when he was here in front of me 10 years ago. And let me see what he's got to say. Again, where did this I'm not making any predictions, but it is rather telling in my opinion.
That's just another hurdle that they're going to have to get through to be able to get this settlement through.
Yeah. So,
and all the plans that the NCAA is making right now are under the assumption that this settlement goes through. And if it doesn't go through, then there are bigger issues afoot, as in potentially the death of the organization.
Well, that's when we, have to do the bump, bump, bum. But I don't
even know if the bump, bump, bum is scary enough to really portray the gravity of what would be happening if that does not go through.
And it's to your point, I think we all... I'll speak for me. I won't speak for you or for others. But I think we were almost lulled into a feeling of security that, well, hey, since the plaintiffs and the defendants got together on these numbers, everybody's going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And now they're not.
We should have known better.
Probably so. Or even if there were objections, would they be objections or any other type of opposition that Judge Wilkin would take seriously? Somebody should go, I want more money. Well, everybody does.
I want more money.
But like I say, because of who it is, does that make a difference? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Judges are humans too.
They are. So we'll see. Anyway, interesting development late last night. Speaking of late last night, as we continue our headlines here for a few more minutes, the Atlanta Braves fell to the San Diego Padres. Final score 5-4. Braves series is done, but so is the season. And we've talked a lot about that already today, so I'm not going to rehash it other than as a fan. I'm disappointed, but hey, they made the playoffs again, and that's what I'm here for. Tigers, of course, eliminated the Astros in Houston 5-2. I'll give you one more factoid that I gave to Elijah earlier that I heard this morning. Just as an example, and he's not even the highest paid Brave, but Charlie Morton, Braves starting pitcher, Charlie Morton, makes $20 million a year. The Detroit Tigers make $19 million. Yes, the entire team makes a combined $19 million.
The active payroll, that is.
Yes,
because they have some players on the injury.
The playoff roster makes $19 million.
Because Javi Baez is not on the playoff roster because he's hurt. He does make $25 million.
Yeah.
So the one player they do pay a lot of money isn't any good.
But the team that beat the mighty Houston Astros makes $19 million.
Remarkable.
The Royals edge the Orioles. Say that 3 times fast. 2-1. O's are done. And the Brewers came back last night for a 5-3 win against the Metropolitans. Those two will play tonight at 7. The winner gets Philadelphia. The Padres, by the way, will get L.A. The Tigers get Cleveland, and the Royals get the Yankees. So there you go.
Are the Royals America's team now? The answer is yes.
Yeah,
I'll answer that for you.
That's fair.
Yeah. We're all Kansas City Royals.
But like Terry said earlier, I mean, there's no question, and when they're both in the playoffs especially, but baseball and the networks, well, baseball will say it doesn't care. Fox wants Yankees-Dodgers so bad it's not even funny.
We have been barreling towards this. A Dodgers-Yankees World Series is like for the last, 5 or 6 years with them spending outrageously, getting all the free
Am I
agents
right?
in the
Is
world.
the last one, when I was a kid, is the last one 81? Is it the last Dodgers? There were 3 in a 5-year period, but I don't think we've had a Dodgers-Yankees.
I believe so.
Dodgers
that would be
Yankees.
it.
Yeah, 81. Fernando Mania. 1981.
Not even in my lifetime.
Yeah. Well, it was in mine. Fernando Mania was fun. Dodgers won that one, too. All right, that's our integrated media headlines of the day. 803-948-8327 for any and all of your home theater needs. Call Integrated Media. More on the Gamecocks and the Rebels coming up.
Yes, obviously that system has been very productive over the years, and we do our best to try to mimic it during practice and make sure our guys understand communication and getting lined up and lining up fast and eyes to the sideline and getting calls in. And it's very, very important every single week, but obviously when you're playing a Tempo team, it's a little bit more important to make sure we're on the same page as fast as we possibly can.
A lot of answers that Clayton White has given have been about being on the same page. Welcome back in alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. We get you prepped for Carolina Ole Miss and what the Rebels are going to want to do. Elijah's made mention several times of the fact that, Ole Miss did all right at times other than third down. They did a lot of the things they wanted to do. Kentucky made some plays here and there, and they were on the same page. Did Carolina get enough done in the off week about themselves to make a big difference and try to really, I think, frustrate is probably the right word, Ole Miss again this weekend? Because that's what you got to do to a team like that. You've got to keep them when they get going. Again, tempo means rhythm and confidence. That's the thing, and you got to disrupt that as much as you can. I want to remind you real quick here that the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest is back and rolling on for another season. If Carolina scores a special teams touchdown this weekend, somebody wins $500. See what happens is it's $100 a game. But we haven't had a winner yet. And this is game 5. So that's 5 games times $100 equals a $500 pot if Carolina scores a special teams touchdown. If they don't, then next week in Tuscaloosa, it'll be $600. And, man, if you could do one next week.
Be pretty big. You'll need all the points you can get.
Yeah, next week was already going to be hard, and it feels like it got harder.
Yeah.
Feels like it got harder. But you can't win if you don't register. But you can register at 1075thegame.com. The Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest. Good luck to all.
Hey, maybe there is some trickeration up the sleeves of Jody Camillus and Shane Beamer.
Well, that's what Greg Gaston. We talked with Greg from Memphis earlier, scouting Ole Miss, and he said he feels like a way to get to Ole Miss is to throw some tricks at him. I'm here for it. Absolutely here for it. So we'll see what happens. I tell you, one thing, too, that you need to do is stop Trey Harris, who, by the way, the star wide receiver for Ole Miss is listed as questionable.
One of the 25 players listed on the availability report.
Did he look fine the other night?
He looked really good, actually. I think 11 catches for 176 yards is pretty good.
This is where, as I said earlier, and I'm not trying to start too much of a thing, but is he questionable? I mean, again,
you're questioning his questionability.
Those of you who watch our buddy Andy Staples show every day, and now it's Andy along with Ari Wasserman. Andy, they spent a lot of time on this game on today's show, and they even had it as part of their prize pick. They're sponsored by Prize Picks. I mean, just whatever, but they spent a lot of time on this game today. But amongst the discussion, right at the top of it, was the screenshot of the availability reports side by side. Carolina has 5 names. Mississippi has 25 names. And Andy says, Lane's trolling us. He said, there's no way that all these dudes that are listed. Now, if the guys that are listed as out, okay.
That would make sense. Hard to lie about that one.
But for the guy, he's like, there's no way that all these guys are questionable. But then Elijah blew my mind earlier by saying he's not really trying to troll or game the system. He's doing it as a way to lay down an excuse when a dude goes down on the field.
It's all plausible deniability.
Yeah. And I had not thought of that. Which, I mean, Elijah just...
That was the whole theme of the second hour of the show yesterday. We were making fun of Ole Miss for having some magic wizardry with the trainers whenever they came out that a player would get down too hurt to leave the field, but then automatically...
Magic spray, the cold stuff. But they got something else in theirs.
Yeah, it's magic, all right? It's double magic.
Yeah.
But maybe this is just, I don't know, just spitballing here.
But you made that changed because I was like, he's just messing around. And then I said Carolina should, tonight's availability report for Carolina should now have 10 more dudes that are questionable.
Should just list the whole roster.
Yeah.
Actually.
All of them. questionable.
The entire roster is questionable.
Do like
There's a joke in there somewhere.
spy novel or spy movie like Microdot, just what's on there? The whole team?
The entire team.
Questionable.
This is
But anyway,
all.
Trey Harris is listed as questionable, but here's Clayton White on what he thinks of the Ole Miss star receiver.
It's kind of have to do both a little bit. It obviously, we look at targets, we look at all those things to try to figure out, some quarterbacks' favorites, and obviously they have a nice group of receivers that can make plays. So you really can't, tilt your hand one way or the other. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you don't want to get caught in that situation.
I don't disagree with him in theory, but in practice, I'm going to based on the statistics. And I've mentioned this a couple of times this week. Harris has 49 catches. The next 4 players combined behind him have 45 catches. That tells me a lot.
He's got 60 of the team's 167 targets on the season.
I mean, he's very much depended upon. He is their best. And by now, again, we talked about expecting some explosives from Carolina or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You got a sample size. They played 5 games to Carolina's 4. And again, the 4 guys behind him have 4 fewer catches combined than he does. So Dart's going that way a lot, and that's fine. I suggested earlier, for those of you who missed it, and the full interview is up on the podcast page or on the website, 1075thegame.com, with Greg Gaston, like, hey, do you kind of go old school Michael Jordan, like just put somebody on, he's going to get his, and you just try to shut down everybody else. But to Clayton's point and what Greg said, Elijah, yeah, I don't know if I would go there. I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm asking, is that something that could work? He said, well, it's plausible, Greg said, but I'm not sure I would do it.
Yeah, because at the same time, too, if Trey Harris can go 18 catches for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, you were still giving up 300 yards in the air and 4 touchdowns in the air.
Yeah, and are you scoring 4 touchdowns?
Yeah. Then you're still going to have to put up those numbers.
Because that's another thing is Carolina, I just still, I think, and again, is this the right way to look at it? You tell me. Last week when they played Kentucky, I said, well, Ole Miss is going to get their 30. And I still feel that way. Maybe I shouldn't. And I know Carolina can play some defense. But I still feel like, man, if you're going to win this game, like you scored 33 against LSU.
Yeah. You can do it.
You can. And I feel like you're going to have to get to a number that starts with a 3 or better if you're going to win this game.
Definitely. I mean, that's unless you make Ole Miss go 1 for 10 on third down. Unless you make them really bad on that money down right there, I don't see how you can keep them under 30. It would be really difficult. Like, as good as your defense is, this offense is really, really good. And I firmly believe the only reason they didn't score more points was because they were just so bad on third down. And Kentucky played them so well defensively on third down. And it squashes a lot of drives.
It's going to be fun, man. And again, I like I say, I'm jumping all over the place with what I think is most important. But mental attitude is going to be just such a big deal for both of these teams. Speaking of which, going into the break, Elijah, get the poll question up here. We've got a poll running for you today on what you guys believe is perhaps most important looking ahead to Saturday.
That's right. 210 votes on this. What is the biggest concern for the Gamecocks going into Saturday's game versus Ole Miss? Is it Lenora Sellers' health? That's leading the way at 42.4%. Ole Miss's tempo is second at 22.4%. 19% say it's the South Carolina offensive line versus Ole Miss's pass rush. And then lastly, tackling at 16.2%. We do have a couple of comments. Noah says offensive line play directly impacts Sellers' health. If he's 90% and OL plays good, then he's fine. If he's 90% and they play bad, he could easily get hurt again. Direct impact.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Drive around the SEC coming up. More on the big games. Is the Missouri quarterback Brady Cook dissing A&M, or is A&M taking things out of context? That and more in the drive around coming up. How old is your air conditioning system at your house? You don't know, do you? Is it really old? When you go outside and see it, got some rust on there and just crud, and you're like, man, probably time for a new one. Well, before you do that, go to myoldair.com because AAA Heating and Air, that's one of their websites, AAA Heating and Air might be bringing you a brand new system. You see, they're looking for the oldest and maybe worst systems in the Midlands service area. And if it's yours, well, you could be in luck. Again, one of every 100 entrants is going to win a brand new system from AAA Heating and Air. So again, go to myoldair.com. Follow the instructions on how to enter and everything. They'll tell you all about it. Maybe a new system is in your very near future. And, of course, AAA is ready to help you out for anything you need, from quick repairs to brand new systems. I love them. You will, too. myoldair.com, AAA Heating and Air.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways. We'll start in Richland County. Got an accident on Browning Road near Burning Tree Road. Got another one on I-20 eastbound over at Clemson Road near exit 80. One on I-77 northbound approaching Killian Road and exit 22. In Lexington County, we have accidents on Oak Drive near US 1 at Augusta Road, Old Cherokee Road at Old Chapin Road, Fish Hatchery Road near Pine Ridge Drive, and lastly, one on Highway 6 near Bethany Church and Pleasant View Drive.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Thursday. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. I'm going to start with a story that Elijah and I laughed about a little bit earlier today because coaches, God bless them, will do almost anything they can to take a little thread of something and pull at it until it suits their needs. And in this case, it's Mike Elko, Texas A&M head coach. They host Missouri coming up this Saturday. And he has taken the words of Mizzou quarterback Brady Cook, and he's not just twisting them. He's turning them into really fancy pretzel or something, man. I mean, he's really working them. Brady Cook was asked about road environments in the SEC. And he said, quote, "At some point, it can only get so loud. In my opinion, the noise at practice is actually louder. They put these big speakers pretty much 2 feet right behind me. You can't hear anything. It's loud. At stadiums, it's loud, but it's like a surrounding, more distant loud," end quote. Mike Elko, meanwhile, has basically said on his call-in show that Brady Cook thinks the crowd noise at Kyle Field isn't very loud and that he wants the infamous 12th man to make sure Brady Cook knows he's coming in. I joked with Elijah earlier, and I was like, I don't like defending Brady Cook or, by virtue, Eli Drinkwitz. Not a fan.
Well documented.
But come on, Coach Elko. This is like Kirby Smart last year with Tonka Hemingway. When Tonka didn't list Sanford Stadium as one of the loudest he had played in. Because he hadn't played in it.
Hard to rank it if you have no frame of reference.
Just didn't go in his mind. He didn't say it wasn't a hard place to play. But you'd have thought Kirby said, yeah, well, he said we weren't. No. And you know what? If you put up big, giant, concert amplifiers and speakers right behind me.
It's deafening.
Yeah. Go stand behind those, or in front of those, rather. And then let them crank them to 11. So Brady's right, but I love these kind of things. So you go, Elko.
He is definitely going full Kirby Smart, but what will never be topped is one of the players saying that Kirby Smart said that some other journalist said or whatever they're gonna be 7-5,
right.
When not a soul on this planet, nobody said they were going to be 7-5.
Nobody.
No, absolutely nobody even jokingly said they were going to be going 7-5.
You're just making it up.
It's fiction.
What was the one in the Jordan documentary that I guess he's kind of admitted he just made up? I can't remember now which one it was, but it was he just made something.
The Calvert Chaney one.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
They just made up.
Yeah.
Shaq made one up with David Robinson. He made up a story that David Robinson snubbed him when he was in college or whatever, which David Robinson would never do.
He's the nicest guy out
human
there.
being ever.
Yeah.
And Shaq just made it up so he could have some type of personal motivation.
How do you make
really
something up
and believe it
that you know to not be true and then turn it into a truth? I mean, this is, it's like George Costanza. It's like the same principles at work. It's only, or it's not a lie if you believe it. But when you make up the lie, I don't know. It's just
when you are the manufacturer of the story, how can you convince yourself that it's real?
This game is bigger for Missouri, I believe.
Yes.
Maybe only a little bit, but to a point you made earlier in the week, we're getting close to the time where A&M, who's had a good start, a close loss at home to Notre Dame is it, begins to slide. I think we find out a little more about Missouri this weekend, but Missouri still hasn't really played. They haven't played a difficult team yet.
And they haven't been very explosive on offense, which was kind of their whole shtick last year.
And I don't think at this point, if you will, that Eli Drinkwitz is playing possum with people.
No, because that doesn't do you any good.
No. So, and Elko's a defensive-minded guy, but I think this game is bigger for Missouri than it is for A&M. And it is big for look, every conference game is big for everybody, period. I get that. But we do have degrees of these things. So we'll see. But, again, Brady Cook didn't do anything wrong. And Mike Elko twisting it that way, that's nah. And Elko knows. They all know, and that's kind of part of it. That's what I think bothers me about it.
Is that they know what they're doing.
That they know what they're doing. It's like, dude, he didn't say that. He didn't say anything negative about you. He was saying that big, giant speakers are right behind his ears at practice. Now, if you want to bring, I don't know, 5,000 fans at a time down onto Kyle Field itself and scream at Brady.
If you allow him on the field while the game is being played, then
okay,
yeah,
sure.
you can simulate that.
Sure. They're right behind him. Kind of like, remember the scenes at the U.S. Open, like when Phil Mickelson was winning at Kiowa, and they let the fans start walking up the 18th, and it's like, y'all are a little too close. If you can do that, and they can scream at you, sure. Anyway, Auburn at Georgia, Tennessee at Arkansas, Bama at Vandy, UCF at Florida. Those are the other ones. We'll have a lot more on these tomorrow. Should any home team, A&M excluded, so that's Georgia, Arkansas, well, Vandy's not, never mind. Georgia, Arkansas, Florida. Who's most worried at home this weekend? I guess Arkansas.
Oh, Arkansas, yeah, because you're playing Tennessee. And that pass rush is really good. And Arkansas can't run the ball too well sometimes.
I was going to say, should anybody be worried about upset alert? But, I mean, again, Florida can't lose.
No, they cannot. And I'm still baffled that they are considered an underdog in this game at home.
I haven't looked at it today. Has it moved? Let me find out real quick. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds here, and I will move to that one and let you know. But, yesterday it was UCF minus, 2.5, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I like I said, if UCF had beaten Colorado the other day, I'd have said, sure, that sounds about right.
Or if they had any type of momentum, but that loss to Colorado is pretty bad. It was convincing.
It is still UCF minus 2.5.
That stuns. I'm floored by that, honestly.
Yeah, I again, if Florida loses, they're not firing Billy until the end of the season. So don't anybody think, well, I just feel like every week it's like, are they going to fire him if they lose? I don't think so.
They'll give him every chance to maybe play his way back into the season.
Well, you know, again, you should beat Central Florida. That doesn't mean you will. I just think you should. But then you go to Tennessee.
Which they're already like 20.5-point underdogs.
Then you host Kentucky. Then you got Georgia in the cocktail party after a week off. I'm not sure the week off is going to help you with Georgia at the cocktail party.
Need like 3 weeks off.
Then you go to Austin. Yeah. Then you host LSU and Ole Miss. That's a double. And then you go to Florida State, where, hey, okay, cool.
Both those teams will just drill on each other for 4 quarters.
If Billy can get them to a bowl, I mean, okay, UCF, that'd be 3. Kentucky is 4.
Maybe.
And Florida State is 5. I don't think you're beating. I mean, look, you can pull an upset somewhere, but I don't know who.
I think the time has come and gone for 6 wins.
I mean, you needed to beat A&M at home, and they beat you by 13. Yeah, I just don't see a bowl game in that future. I just don't. That's the drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy. Stop by the showroom, see why Herndon makes you smile. Together, let's drive. We'll come back with a few more final thoughts from Clayton White, looking ahead to Carolina and Ole Miss. It's the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show here on this Thursday afternoon. Once again, Elijah and I tomorrow will be out at Columbia Craft in the where?
That'd be the Sista.
The Sista, the South Vista. That's where we are, a couple of blocks down from Colonial Life Arena. So come out and see us. We're there 3 to 6. We'll have the Wild Card Showdown, chance to win some beer. Elijah has a chance to go 5-0 again. He'd love to go 5-0 for you on a recorded message.
I'd love to go 5-0 for you again.
Well, somebody should have listened to you last night. They'd have gone 5-0.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to go 5-0 for you.
But I don't think you can.
Not so recorded.
No, it's a live message.
It's a live message.
Live message.
It is recorded too, but just more.
It will be recorded, but like nobody has to call your 800 number.
Nope. Just visit our podcast
Although you
page.
can, if you call Elijah's 800 number, I don't know what you'll get, but
I don't think you want to know what you're going to get. You can call anyway. I'm not going to stop you, but I don't think you want to know. It kind of falls under the category of don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to.
that's fair. It's good advice, kids. It's good advice. Because sometimes I'll say, like, the only dumb question is a question not asked. But that may not, there are exceptions to every rule.
Well, it wouldn't make it a dumb question. It's just.
Well, that's true.
You have opened yourself up to information that you did not want to be privy to.
Yeah. As long as you can go 5-0 for me on a recorded message, I'll be fine.
I'd love to do it.
You think he really would? I guess that's genuine. That he really wants
I think
to
so.
go. I think he wants to go 5-0
I don't think he likes letting people down.
on a recorded message. But what if you get a live message? What what does it take to call that guy live?
What if you call instead of trying to hear this voicemail that's got the pics, he just picks up the phone and goes, "Hello."
Yeah, right. You're like,
sorry to bother you.
Yeah, prank call gone wrong.
I'm sorry to bother you. Have a good rest of your night, sir. Hang up.
It's like that since we're, because Bart prank calls Mose a lot. And one night he called and he's like, I'm looking for a huge ass. And so Mo says that. And the guy goes, I'm a huge ass. and so then Bart's like, I got a level with you, mister. This is a prank call gone wrong. I like to bail right now. All right. What a polite young man. And he just hangs up. It's great. All right, sorry.
Good bit. That's a great bit.
I love those. I love those. There's a few. I won't say any more of them, but there's a few of them that are great. One more here from Clayton White, please, sir. Number 13. Well, again, what is South Carolina? We've talked. You heard Clayton earlier. We had some cuts. The tempo teams and what you've got to do. How is Carolina preparing themselves to go up against the Ole Miss tempo?
It starts with our show team, our offense that's going to simulate it, and our offense itself can have gas plays itself, fast plays. So they do a good job of, we work it every week for like 4 or 5 plays against each other. But obviously, when we get like a 40-play rack on defense versus Ole Miss offense, and obviously that offense has to work it. We brought out, this is like my 8th year in this defense, 8th year coordinating, 11th year in this defense. And so we understand that you have to really work it at practice in order to get it. So, we work on it for sure.
You mentioned, Elijah, this week, when you look at the progression of Mississippi in terms of plays run, in the 70s a couple of games, in the high 60s for another, but then just 56 plays against Kentucky. This is a rhetorical question, but does South Carolina have a number on a whiteboard that they circle, like, if we go above this, it's bad? I don't know, or just some idea at least in their head.
A goal. I mean, it's fair to reach like a goal. Think if we keep them under 60 plays, we like our chances, right? And that's something to strive for. And really, I guess that kind of just goes back hand to hand on third down too. If you can stop them on 9 third downs, then that's how you can maybe get that number below 60. And this isn't even really math. This is just kind of common sense.
Yeah, please don't do math.
Yeah, the fewer plays they have to score, the less opportunities they have to score a lot of points. You make them have to be incredibly efficient and completely wipe out their margin for error.
I like that. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, the less chances you have to do something, that's good.
And that's why time and possession doesn't really matter. Because you know what? I was looking at it today when they played Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern had the ball for almost 10 more minutes than they did. They ran almost the same amount of plays.
Wow.
Didn't matter.
And again, Kentucky beats them by 3, but had the ball twice as much.
Yeah.
It was basically 40-20 last week.
Yeah, in terms of time of possession, and but then it also checks out that they ran a lot more plays than they did too. I mean, the total plays, Kentucky ran 75, and Ole Miss ran 56.
Well, you've made the best point, I think, so far this week. 1 of 10 on third down. I mean, that becomes there again. There's just add one more to my list. I mean, tomorrow when I have here's Jay's keys to the game. And it's going to be like,
you're going to walk around like
it's like the
janitor.
Security guy. Yeah, like the janitor or the security guard that has like 40 keys on the ring. Like, which one is that? Well, they're all important.
Can you tell me which one it is? Nope.
Doesn't matter.
But they're all important.
It all matters, there. So
I will stand here for hours until one of these works.
Again, we will be at Columbia Craft tomorrow, coming up in just a matter of minutes on these very airwaves, at least for most of you. Carolina Calls with Shane Beamer and Todd Ellis. Now, again, the next availability report will be published around 8. We've joked a lot about that today. Again, Carolina has 5 guys on it, 1 guy out, 3 guys questionable, and that's the big 3 of Brown, Sellers, and Sanders at this point in time. So I don't know how much more Shane will let on to what the injury situation is looking like. But I imagine he'll give you some updates on how Rocket and Lenoris and Jared have been doing in practice, but we're that much closer to it. Appreciate Lulu Kessen's time today. That was a lot of fun. Our buddy Greg Gaston in Memphis as well. For Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Have a great night. We'll see you all tomorrow at Columbia Craft.